until recently, I haven't heard of something called Project 2025, which is an interesting piece of work. This is a political initiative published in April 2022 by the American conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, a Christian nationalist initiative aiming to restore America's Judeo-Christian heritage. Hello and welcome, my name is William, a researcher in sociology at the University of Warwick in the UK, and this is a video series around my latest book, Muslims in the Neoliberal Empire, which is about how the society colonizes us and what can we do about it. Is America actually Judeo-Christian for starters? But well, let's be phenomenologists and go with the flow and accept for the purpose of this exercise that yes, America has always been Judeo-Christian and white. Yeah, go for it. Make America white again. Christian nationalism has made the headlines recently with the Trump second term, but was already on the table Trump on his first term because of his apparent alliance with Christian supporters. And according to statistics, so always take with a pinch of salt, he won 84% of the white evangelical vote in 2020. I don't have the latest figures, but I guess it's more or less the same. So we've seen images like Trump brandishing the Bible. And if we would imagine anyone else brandishing a Quran or a Torah or any other religious text, I'm not sure they'll be really welcomed. But it's the Bible and it's Trump, so everything's fine, right? But when it comes to Christian nationalists, we have to remember, as always with society, it is a very heterogeneous group. Like humans are not a monolith, and we use labels for the purposes of simplification, but they have many different and sometimes conflicting opinions. But when it comes to Project 2025, it mainly argues for things such as America is and should remain a Christian nation. The laws of the United States should explicitly be Christian. Christianity must become somehow the official religion of the United States. It's nothing really recent. It's actually a very old movement. Some people locate the first charter of American Christian nationalism in 1630. On that year, a certain John Winthrop, the future governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, delivered a speech where he compared the settlement to, I quote, a city upon a hill in covenant with God, serving as a beacon to all people. However, Christian nationalism is far from being inclusive. When we say Christian, does it include all Christians? Can Catholics be part of it, for example? In the book, The Religion of American Greatness, What's Wrong with Christian Nationalism, Paul Miller, a political scientist at Georgetown, tries to make sense in this history. So himself, being a Christian and a patriot, he writes, it is of course not all kinds of Christianity, but very specifically the Anglo-Protestant Christian. But then people have been arguing, how can we accept Trump as a Christian president, someone who argues for traditional family values, when his own family life has been more than chaotic, to say the least? Cheating, like sleeping with porn stars, but still people continue to associate him with Christianity. And the reason for that, I refer you to some of my previous videos about extrinsic and intrinsic values, in and out group theory, or the video just before this one about nationalism. It doesn't have to make sense, because nationalism, which is, as Benedict Anderson tells us, is about our imagined kind of tribes. It relies on myths and narratives. And the problem is these myths and narratives attached to the story of a nation or a country, people tend to identify personally with them, which means that if you attack part of this history, all these myths, these narratives, they feel personally threatened. And there's a whole psychological and neuropsychological mechanism at play. If you dare to point at one country's fault or one leader's fault, people jump immediately on the defensive, and that's because it's tied to their sense of self. They cannot make the distinction between their own individuality and the nation or the tribe, the imagined community. and extend this identity to the leader of said tribe, community, country, nation, and so on. But this shows something very important. Is it actually about religion? In the US, just like in many other countries, less and less people identify as Christians, and among those, less and less take part in a Christian way of life, like attending like a church. And this is not only for Christianity, but this is for all religions. Some figures, in 1999, a Gallup study found that 70% of Americans belonged either to a church, a synagogue, or a mosque. In 2020, 21 years later, the number was 47%. Back then it was 70%. And for the first time in 100 years, worshippers were the minority. And this is a paradox that you can see all over the world. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, talks about the importance of Christian roots of his country, even though fewer than 20% of Hungarians attend church regularly. And the same goes for all other European countries, whether we talk about France, Poland, Spain, the UK. Lots of people blame the decline of Christianity on immigrants, while the reality is just, less and less people go to church. In countries like the UK, churches are for sale because there is not enough money to sustain them. Not enough people attend the church. So why do people refer it as Christian nationalism? If we look at books such as The Flag and the Cross, which analyze this phenomenon, Christian refers less to theology, but more to heritage, identity. One example from my own personal life, my parents, who are Polish Catholic, they sent me and my sister to Catholic schools, but they never taught me the values of Christianity. Even at school, we learned about stories of the prophets and stuff, but we never learned about what does it mean to live life as a Christian. Of course, Trump doesn't have to behave as a Christian should to be considered Christian, because in that particular case, Christianity is an identity label, a label for a tribe, let's say, and again, or an imagined community, to say that, I'm taking this side. People, and this is a human, natural thing, we like to belong to a group, to somewhere. And this is why even if Trump doesn't live his life as a Christian, he creates a sense of relatability to anyone who identifies as a Christian. Because if we ask people who actually practice Christianity, theologians, a lot of them disagree with what's happening in the US. So you can read some of the articles linked in the description below. When Project 2025 says that the laws of the United States should explicitly be Christian, first of all, this is something which is anti-constitutional, but also if we look at how Jesus spread his message, it was never through force. It was by persuasion, not power. Christianity, they argue, didn't come to impose beliefs on people or forcing them to abandon other religions. Some other people argue that no nation can be a Christian nation state because Christianity is by definition transnational, universal. It came to break barriers between people. And this is what some people see as the danger of the narrative of Christian nationalism. In the book Taking America Back for God, it gives a divine sanction, they say, to ethnocentrism and nativism, which means it creates the feeling that it is a divine right, or maybe a divine obligation for people to exclude others who are of a different ethnicity or from a different country. It creates this illusion that this is a God-given right to reject, to exclude and dominate others. So there is a paradox when Christian nationalism focuses on power, dominance, exclusion, because it goes against the teachings of Jesus, which is about love, humility, compassion, inclusivity. Some people argue that the nationalist ideology, which relies on fear, hatred, and division, also contradicts the message of Jesus, which was about compassion, forgiveness, and reconciliation. But this is a story old as religions, let's say. Because when an ideology prioritized political power over spiritual principles, it distorts the gospel, it distorts the scriptures, it distorts the principles and values of the religion to perpetuate harm, which is completely paradoxical. And this is something we've seen all over the world for forever. You know, how some Muslims distort their text to justify harm. Some Buddhists in Myanmar distort Buddhism to justify a genocide. As always, you know, Christianity is not what Christians do. Not all Christians practice or even know the religion, or even believe in God. If I refer to believing without belonging or belonging without believing by Grace Davy, people can identify as Christian, but it doesn't mean that they practice the religion or even believe in God. It is just, again, cultural heritage, an identity label. I hope I was able to shed some light on, you know, the layers and the layers like underneath the label Christian nationalism, and how in fact it links to some of our most basic instincts of wanting to belong to something. And I'm really looking forward to the future videos about chapter 4, where we're gonna start talking about healing from this society that literally breaks people. So more hopeful topics. If you want to dig deeper into these topics and be kept updated about any live events I would be doing, whether in person in Europe or the US, or online, because I've got a reading club where I distribute parts of my work and we have conversations around it, I encourage you to sign up to the newsletter and keep an eye on the links I'll be sending for any kind of future events. And in the meantime, I hope it was useful, and take care of yourselves and each other.